Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Hypno Fairy Godmother Show. I'm so glad that you found me today and that we are back. Um, it's so nice to see you on there. I love that. Know that I am, in fact, Shirley, a clinical hypnotherapist in private practice here in Southern California, an advocate, a mental health first responder at Whispering Zen Hypnotherapy and Wellness. Thank you for coming to the show where you can come as you are and leave as I hope you want to be. And if you've ever felt like you want to more freely enjoy a healthy habit or just get back to being a better you, then let's talk. Because although I do specialize working with the LGBTQIA community, I welcome and I work with everybody. So if you need help, if you need somebody to talk to, know that I am always here for you. Never worry about your Hypno Fairy Godmother being there for you. I always am. And you can contact me on all of my social media sites. Usually just look under Hypno Fairy Godmother. Or you can go onto my website at whisperingzenhypnotherapy.com. So, again, I want to thank you for joining me on the show today. I do have my chat open today, so if you have any questions while we're discussing things, just let me know. Sorry about that. Woo. So, before we get going, we need to start the show like we always start the show, so I want to make sure that everybody is in a wonderful, safe place. And by safe place, I just mean no driving, no worrying, working with heavy equipment, no trying to work on a big project or a little project, something you need to concentrate on. So don't do that, because sometimes you have a tendency of closing your eyes, or you'll be taking notes or concentrating, and I don't want anything to happen to any of you. So know that I'll remind you again this later, but if you want any information, let me know. Or I keep all of my shows on my Facebook page and my YouTube channel. So if you want to re-listen to anything or watch anything, just know that you have other options. So that's great. So safe places, everybody, because we don't want any swerving or whirving on the road. That's just not right. Also, don't want you to get in trouble for work, for listening to something that, you probably shouldn't be listening to. So for this first part, you know how I do this. Let's start with a great big deep breath. Hold it. And exhale with a smile. Yes. So the next thing I want you to do is, come on, let's wiggle those toes. Wiggle your toes. Come on. I know it's weird, but wiggle your toes. Inside your shoes, outside your shoes, I don't care. Today we are actually having a really warm day where I'm at, so I'm out of my shoes, but do what makes you comfortable. Next thing I want you to do is I want you to wiggle your butt. Yep, wiggle your butt. Squeeze in those buns, wiggle it around, get yourself moving, because you cannot do that without smiling or a weird look on your face. And I can't go, everybody wiggle your butt, without also smiling. So that's what we do. And the last thing I want you to do is I want you to take one more great big deep breath from your core. Hold it. And this time I want you to exhale with an affirmation, something that you can tell yourself, something like, we got this. Everything's going to be okay. Whatever you need to do to tell yourself that today's going to be okay, that you're going to make it through today. Sometimes you need to make it through the whole day. Sometimes you just need to make it through the next hour. And for this next, I will be there with you. So tell yourself affirmations, wonderful things about yourself that are true. You are wonderful. You are needed. You are loved. All those wonderful things. You can do this. I leave affirmations everywhere, all over my stuff, because I know how important it is for you to see that and then just go, oh, that is right. That is wonderful. So it's important. Next thing I want you to do is, if you've got a couple extra few seconds there, I want you to wiggle your legs, move your core, maybe move your shoulders, roll your neck. Let's get everything moving. Oh, yeah. And now you've got things moving from your toes to your nose and straight up, and we are rolling. We are relaxing. We are doing great. We are doing great. Also wanted to let you know that if you'd like to become a sponsor of the show or help me out, buy me a cup of coffee, I always have my Patreon page, or you can always find me on, like I said, whisperingzenhypnotherapy.com. I love my Patreons and I love my helpers, and you are all wonderful. So yeah, if you'd like to help out the show, it's a great way to do it. So as I have talked before, and you know, I am a clinical hypnotherapist, and I deal a lot with mental health and how to maintain it and how to help it. And I tend to talk about mental health as this huge umbrella of mental health. And I wanted to kind of get a little more specific. And I think the next couple weeks, I'm going to talk about specific parts of mental health, like diagnosis. Now, I don't make diagnosis. I am not legally allowed to make diagnosis. So these are diagnoses that are kind of in general, that affect a lot of people, and what to do in case you think maybe you do have this diagnosis, when's a good time to go see a doctor. Are there things that you can do to handle it on your own? Most of the time, you know, it kind of depends. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But it's always good to know when is a good time to see if you need a little extra help. So this is a total different part of Weeble Kung Fu, which, as we know, is that way of becoming a better you. It's trying to become that person that you wish you were growing up. We all know that when we were growing up, we wish we would have had this person that we could talk to. Well, why don't you become that person? The whole object is become that person. To know that a younger generation has somebody to talk to, and you're overly qualified for that position. You may not think you are, but trust me, your life experience is what kids today need, or even adults need today. It's important because you never want to feel like you're alone. You never want to feel like you're the only one. So become that person. And all this is about is becoming that person you wish you would have had, or even becoming a more authentic version of yourself, being true to yourself. It's very important. You've got to live your own life. You've got to do what's best for you. And this is a process. This is not something you wake up one day and you go, oh, I totally get it. Now this is what I'm going to be. And this is what I'm going to do. So today I want to talk about caring for that mental health. If you or someone that you know may have ADHD, attention deficit hyper disorder, which is what it stands for. And there are ways that you can, little symptoms that you can look at, but there are holistic ways to handle it and medical ways to handle it, because how your mind works affects how we how we care for our body. It all just rolls together. It's all connected. Your mind, your body. We talked about, helping out your soul. So attention deficit hyperactive disorder is a condition that the biggest thing is characterized as inattention, hyperactivity, being impulsive. And it's most commonly diagnosed when you're a kid, and they figure about close to 9% of kids ages 4 to 17 have ADHD. But even though it's normally diagnosed as a child, it doesn't just affect children. It affects adults. And at least, it may not sound like a lot, but 5% of adults 18 to 44 or above that have ADHD. And you can get treatment for it if you need to. and you can be successful, with a little bit of help. You could always be successful at work and school and leading productive lives. So it's not like, oh my God, I have this. And now I realize that I have this and everything falls apart. That's not what we're about. And there are tools that you can use. And a lot of times doctors will give you, if you go to a doctor and you decide that that's the route that you want to take, that they'll give you like an EEG and they'll check out your brain and they'll go, oh, okay, I see something. Now, sometimes they can just go off of the symptoms, which, there are a lot of symptoms, which we will go over. But, now that even more doctors are understanding what this means and how it affects your life, it's becoming a little more accepted. And it's one of the most common mental disorders affecting children and a big one affecting adults, which is why I think it's so important. Because I remember when I was a kid, teachers used to say, that you were just a hyper kid, which is true, you were. But on your report card or on your teacher, conferences, parent-teacher conferences, they would just refer to you as a little social butterfly who flutters around from place to place and has a low attention span, and they didn't know what to do with you. And then you think of that, and as an adult, it starts to make so much more sense. It really starts to make sense. That as a kid you were like this. Well, now as an adult, maybe some of the symptoms have slowed down a little bit, but it's still there, and a big part of it is impulse control. A lot of us didn't have great impulse control. Some of us still don't have great impulse control, and that's okay. Almost everyone has similar symptoms to ADHD at some point in their lives, whether it's difficulty, that are recent or only occurred occasionally in the past. If it's something that you only have these weird impulses every once in a while, or you feel a little all over the place every once in a while, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have ADHD. That just may mean that you have these little impulses, but it's not chronic. And ADHD is kind of one of those things that's known as a chronic thing, which means that it's more consistent. And diagnosis in adults can be difficult because some of the symptoms, like I said, are similar to other conditions, such as anxiety or mood disorders, which is back to your mental health. And not knowing whether you just have anxiety or a mood disorder or whether you have full ADHD, sometimes doctors, as we know, are a little hesitant to give you a diagnosis of anything because they feel like they're overprescribing things or that it's just a mild thing, and doctors have a problem diagnosing. So sometimes you have to actually go to the doctor with your list of all the different little things and ask them to test you or ask them if you think you're right. You know yourself better than anyone does. You know what your body's like. You know what your brain is like. You know whether you're having these impulses and these problems every single day or whether you're having them once a month or every 6 months or whatever. You have to be the advocate for your own mental health. I'm telling you this right now because doctors are not that, that great with just jumping to a conclusion or wondering. And they can do blood tests, they can do brain scans, they can do everything else, but it all depends on if the doctor, and like I said, to do this, to get officially diagnosed, if that means a lot to you to be officially diagnosed, you do have to see some sort of licensed doctor, whether it's a normal doctor or general doctor, whether it's a psychiatrist, psychologist, mental health professional, whatever. And especially if you're an adult, because like I said, sometimes they just go, oh, you just have a little anxiety. Oh, you just have da-da-da. And they downplay it, which works great for some people, but it doesn't work great for everyone, you know? And some of the signs of having ADHD are becoming easily distracted and jumping from one activity to the other. A good example of this is today, while I was finishing up the show, my brain went, but I want to try this. And I switched from what I was doing and spent 45 minutes doing something that had nothing related to what I was trying to accomplish. Now, I felt better once I had started it, because if not, sometimes your brain just won't let up, and it's like, stop, do what you're doing, do. You know, you have to do it. You feel overly compelled. Now, I'm not done with that project, but I felt absolutely compelled. Some people with ADHD, their best time is from like 2 to 4 in the morning, because it's kind of quiet outside, and maybe your brain has been percolating for a while, and you have to draw it out, write it down. Whatever it is, you have to get it out, or you will never be able to calm down. That's kind of one of the things. Maybe you get bored easily, and it's not just a boring project. Your brain is moving so fast that you can't concentrate. You know, difficulty focusing attention on a single task or activity. You know, losing assignments that maybe in school or maybe your employer gave you. You know, losing objects. You put it here, now you can't find it. Daydreaming or wandering a lot. Now, we all daydream, and we have thoughts that go in and out of our minds every single day. And that's okay. It just depends on the frequency. You know, difficulty processing information quickly. A lot of times when your brain's going 100 miles an hour, it's hard to do that. You know, maybe you're real fidgety or squirmy, have trouble sitting still. I know I do. I know I always have. I also know that I have to do 3 things at the same time. I have had doctor after doctor tell me that what I need to do is just concentrate on one thing, just do one thing at a time. Don't try to do 2 things, don't try to do 3 things. And when you have this, a lot of times what you do is you just go, you know what, it's nothing big, I'm just multitasking. Well, there's multitasking, and then think of it as having your computer open and having 14 tabs open. So you're not just doing 1 or 2 things, you're doing everything. And by doing that, you're not actually doing anything very well. So that's kind of one of the things where you have to like play with everything, and you have difficulty doing tasks and activities one at a time. Now, like I said, it could be that. It could just be spontaneous things. It could just be things that happen every once in a while. We all have things that happen every once in a while. Sometimes you get a great idea and you can't get it out of your head, but it happens every 6 months. When you have an ADHD diagnosis, or you think you do, this is an everyday thing. Your impatience, you're acting without regard for consequences. We all have a filter in our brain, or we should all have a filter in our brain, where the thought is supposed to go in, and then you're supposed to analyze it for a second to make sure whether it's a good idea to say anything. And then, you get a yes or no answer. And then you either say it or you keep it to yourself. A lot of times that doesn't happen. It just goes straight from your brain to your mouth. And now you may have offended people. You may have affected the way something happens. So, if you're concerned about this, it's important It's important. Sometimes, especially when you were a kid, or if you have kids, do they have a problem taking turns or waiting or even sharing? Do you act out without regard for consequences? And that's impulses. Do you just do it and not think? Now, we've gone over some of those things, but what causes this? What are some of the things that might cause either a child or an adult? And usually it does start as a child. You know these things as a kid. But like I said, they didn't know what to call it, and they didn't know what you should or shouldn't do. They just thought you were a social butterfly, unless it was extreme, and then things got a little bit worse. But still, just recently, it seems that parents are having their kids diagnosed to get a little bit of help. It's not that parents didn't want to before, it's just they didn't know. They just thought they had a hyper little kid. Some kids are hyper forever. Some kids are just hyper for a short amount of time. You get these little bursts of energy. We've all seen kids that all of a sudden get up and get the zoomies, and they're just running back and forth, and then they're fine. Like I said, it depends. Does it happen occasionally, or does it happen every 10 minutes? Just being observant. And one of the causes can be genetics. That there are genes that are a large contributor to ADHD. Sometimes it runs in families. And some trends, in specific areas of your brain will also contribute to this, kind of attention disorder. There can also be environmental factors. Was there any type of drug dependency or alcohol abuse during pregnancy? Not saying it happens every time. These are just things that could happen. Maybe exposure. This is one of the things that made me kind of go, is exposure to lead as a child. Now, growing up, when I grew up, we didn't know, honestly, that lead was a horrible thing. And they put lead in paint. They put lead everywhere. Nobody knew. It was just a thing. Now people are more observant and they're more cognizant, and they try to get the lead out. Now paints aren't made with leads and stuff like that. But maybe if you're an adult and you're thinking about this, how much of your house was actually lead paint or fixtures or whatever? And that's not saying that every kid, again, not every kid that was exposed has ADHD. Not every kid that maybe their mother had a problem during pregnancy, this happens to. This is not an everything. And doctors are still speculating, and scientists and researchers are still kind of speculating, which is kind of one of the reasons why they don't always like to do diagnosis, because they honestly don't know. But these are some of the things that they've actually thought, and although it does occur in adults and children, like I said, it's most often, diagnosed as a child, and it can be difficult. It can be so difficult because like I said, you just have a kid that's like a little out of control. And a lot of times the first person to notice is a teacher, because your kids and you were at school most of the day. So maybe your family didn't really notice. And by the time you got home, you were a little more tired. So it was a little more downplayed. Or if you did athletics after school or had after school activities, by the time you got home, you were a little more low-keyed. So it wasn't quite as crazy. So, they might not have noticed. And there's no single test that can diagnose a child or an adult. There just isn't. So that's why I say meeting with a doctor or a mental health professional is what's necessary to get the the information. And some people just assume that they're a little hyper and they don't need an official diagnosis. Other people, it means a lot to them to have a diagnosis. So, some outside things can also be environmental changes. If you move a lot, did that kind of make you a little up and down and around? Did you have difficulty in school? Do you have difficulty at work now? Were there outside medical issues that have an effect? Since there's no one set diagnosis, or one set test, then, it's kind of a little, one of those things with ADHD is, it would be nice if there was just a test, but, there isn't. And other mental illnesses can cause problems with attention and behavior. For example, some mood disorders you could just have a mood disorder that makes you have a hard time concentrating. Some anxiety disorders can cause problems with restlessness. Some personality disorders can cause impulsivity. It's, clinicians, sometimes it's hard to get a diagnosis because doctors and clinicians don't always recognize any type of mental health disorder because maybe they don't have the training. Sometimes I have actually taught doctors and said, did you think of this? This is why I'm saying this. And they go, huh. If you have a doctor or a clinician that's open, maybe, like I said, you take that list with you and you say, I'm concerned about this. Is there something we can do? Sometimes they may put you on medications, but a lot of times self-management is what you need. When I get really going and my brain gets really anxious, I go back to my breathing. We talk about breathing all the time. I go back to my breathing. I go back to my toolbox. And it helps. Depending on what, how severe your problems are, how severe your condition is. Sometimes it can just be calmed down by simply mindfulness, getting yourself back to zero, all those things that we work about, meditation, breathing, calming yourself down, letting yourself relax a little bit. And like I said, when you do your deep breaths and you're doing it from your core and you're considering your breath and you're thinking about that, everything slows down. Everything. Your heart slows down. Your lungs slow down. Your brain even will slow down. And think about how important that is. And this is one of the reasons why I teach all my clients proper breathing. And I teach them mindfulness. And sometimes we've gone into full meditation because of how important it is for you to know how to do these things. That if you do feel a little overloaded, I'm always telling you to check in with yourself. This is one of those things, and sometimes you don't have to go straight to medication. Sometimes you don't have to do medication at all, and it can be handled. These are important things. Sometimes maybe you need to go to counseling to talk it out, cognitive behavior therapy, talk therapy. It teaches you the relationship between your thoughts and your moods and your behaviors. Sometimes if you just know more about it, it can help the situation. So knowledge is an amazing thing. Now, I'm not telling you to immediately go online and look up all the symptoms because sometimes the internet is not the place to go. You could put in symptoms in, 5 different sites and they can give you 5 different diagnoses. So in cases like this, before you freak out and you jump to the gun, and, I remember one time I was kind of sick and I put in my diagnosis into WebMD, which is like, don't ever do this. But I put in my diagnosis and the number 2 thing that it said was the plague. I did not have the plague. In this case, I had bronchitis, and I was pretty sure it was bronchitis, but I put in my, so sometimes when you put in symptoms, you can get these random things, and the next thing you know, I'm walking around going, oh God, do I have the plague? Who am I going to hurt? Da-da-da. It's like, so I don't always recommend, going into WebMD and other places with symptoms. Sometimes it's so much better to talk to a professional. Talk to a counselor. I do a lot of counseling. I do a lot of, things like that. And it helps people sometimes to just talk it through. And sometimes when you talk it through, you realize that things aren't quite as bad as you thought they were. It's so easy to jump to massive conclusions on how horrible things are. So it's important that, if you do think that you have any type of mental illness or mental disorder or mental hiccup, don't just try to figure it out. Don't just look it up on Facebook or Google or whatever. Really, really do get help. When people say they do their own research, it's terrifying. Because sometimes you just need self-help, strategies for maintaining. And you could, sometimes it helps to have a consistent schedule, lots of notes. I have Post-it notes everywhere. Make a list. I'm always telling you, make a list of what you need to do. Make a chart if you need to keep things straight. Mental health practitioners can help you with these things. If you have a problem sleeping, what do you need to do? Do you need to have a routine? Great sleep habits are really important. Maybe joining a support group is what you need. There are support groups that are online. There are some that are in person, but most of them are online. And these are things that can help you cope before you jump to the huge conclusion. Because when I talk about these things, it's not about trying to convince you that you have this diagnosis. Because like I said, I don't diagnose. I'm legally not allowed to diagnose. I would never give you information about, medications. I would never give you diagnosis about any of that. That's not what I do. And if you're going to somebody or you've got a peer group and they're giving you medical advice, don't take it. Please, I'm begging you. We all have that friend that when you're feeling down or when you're feeling anxious, gives you the worst advice possible because they think they're helping. If you really think that you need to get a handle on your mental health, please see a professional. And know that about 2/3 of children and adults with ADHD have other conditions. It can be a learning disability. It can be refusal, do you have a problem with authority? Sometimes you just have a crappy attitude. Sometimes it's more than that. Anxiety and depression. Could be that, or it could be that combined. You can have more than one condition or more than one symptom or more than one diagnosis. And remember, you are not a diagnosis. You are a person. These are just little aspects of you. That's all they are. Some people have obsessive compulsive disorder. Some people have it a little, some people have it a lot. They have to change things. They have to move. They have to fidget. Some people have bipolar disorder. Some have just sleep disorders. You know, it's usually an accumulation of things. It's not just one thing. You know, sometimes we just have to get out of our own way. Sometimes, you know, when you're trying to self-diagnose, then sometimes we try to self-cure ourselves in not so healthy ways. A lot of people go to drugs and alcohol to make themselves feel better, when maybe what you really needed was a little quiet time and to talk it out with a professional. You know, we try to self-cure ourselves, and sometimes it works. But if you're going to try to do that, make it something healthy. You know, do the breathing, do the lists, do the journaling, do whatever. If you have an art, do what your art is. Build something, create something. I would never tell you to not do what your body needs, not do what your mind is. What are little things that you can do to help you if you do think you have this? Now, some people just, like I said, have little hyperactivity just on occasion. Or you get a little obsessed with something. You know, you see a craft that's new, you see a project that's new, and you absolutely have to do it. And you absolutely have to be there the whole time. And you have to do it until it's done. That's a little more OCD than just being ADHD. So know that there are differences. You can be obsessed with something for a while, you get it out of your system, and then you're fine. Other times, like I said, 15 tabs open, and you're trying to work with everything at the same time. So if you do think that, you know, you have issues with this, like I say, always take note of your mental state. Always. Check in with yourself. You know, one of my favorite things is, you know, the 3-minute mindfulness thing. When I say, ask yourself, how am I doing right now? Check in with yourself. You know, focus on what's going on around you. Sometimes that's what you need when you're feeling a little out there and you're feeling a little like I'm starting to slide. Check in with yourself. I must ask myself 10 times a day, how am I doing right now? Check in, you know, and then I know that when I do that, I need to start breathing. I need to start paying attention to how my body's reacting, and usually things will slow down. And it's not going to be an immediate thing. It's really not. So know that sometimes things just slow down, but they can take a while. You know, we all know that we have thoughts that pop in and out of your brain at all times. Don't try to ignore them, but don't halt them. Make notice. If you don't need that thought or you don't need that reaction, get it out of there. You know, observe and release. It's kind of like catch and release. When just those weird thoughts come in, don't let it overtake you. This is all little things that are in your toolbox. Don't let things, you know, use the 4, 3, 2, 1. You know, if you start to feel like your brain's getting a little out of control, you know, and then stop what you're doing. Pull out things out of your toolbox, like 4, 3, 2, 1, which is all of a sudden you look and you find 4 things that you can see, and you find 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you can hear, and tell yourself 1 thing that you absolutely know is true. And you can do this anytime, anywhere, work situations, social situations. If you need to step out of a situation because you feel like things are a little weird, then do that. It's about maintaining you. It's about being the best part of you. You know, if you have kids, you know, check in on them. Ask them how they're doing and actually listen. When I ask somebody how they're doing, I don't want them to just say fine and walk away. Because I want them to know that when I ask that, I actually care. I actually care about what they're saying. I'm actually listening to what their response is. Be that person. Sometimes you need that person, and sometimes you can be that person. Remember, being that person that you wish you would have had growing up, having information as an adult that you wish you would have had as a kid. And it's not about blaming your parents or blaming your teachers or blaming anybody. Things have changed so much. You know, I was going to school in the 70s and 80s. They didn't test for things like this. They didn't test for much of anything. They either said you were a good kid, they said you were a troubled kid, they said you were this, that. They kind of stuck you in a trajectory. They labeled you and they let you know. And now as adults, some of us are going, wait a second. What if, as a kid, they would have noticed something? What if, I would have gotten more help or more support during this? And it's not anybody's fault. You can't go back to your second grade teacher and go, if you would have noticed at this point that I had an issue, you should have said something to my parents, not just labeled me as a bad kid. Or, look at your parents and go, what were you looking at? No, it doesn't work that way. People are more aware these days of mental health in general. Mental health has grown so much. Before, nobody liked to talk about any type of mental health problem. Nobody wanted to consider it. Nobody wanted to think about it. You just didn't do it. You didn't bring it up. We don't talk about that. Now I'm telling you that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to find help. It's okay that if you need extra help, that's why I'm here for you. That's why other mental health advocates are there for you, so that you have somebody. And, if you don't have access to, or you can't afford a mental health practitioner, there are actually hotlines. There are places you can go online that you can talk to a professional that is usually a free service. Depending on whether you're you're a youth, whether you're a teenager, whether you're a younger adult, older adult, you'll be able to find somebody that you can talk to. And like I said, I'm always there for you. Your Hypno Fairy Godmother is always there. I handle texts. I handle whatever. If you need to make an appointment, make an appointment. If you just need somebody to text and talk to. If you just need to be reminded that you're a wonderful person. If you need to be reminded that you're an amazing person. That you deserve all the good things in life. Sometimes you just need somebody to tell you that. And I would love to be that person to tell you that. Because I know that. And today I found on a different site, I know I do a lot on different sites, but it's a wonderful version of the ABCs. And I posted this on my page, so you don't have to write this thing down. It's posted on my Facebook page. But it's this wonderful version of the ABCs, and I think that's a wonderful way for me to kind of end things. So I want you to just listen if you can, and kind of take some of these to heart. Appreciate something. Be a good friend. Confront a hard thing. Decide. Explore your backyard. Find peace. Go outside more than you think you should. Help a neighbor. Invigorate yourself. Journey. Journal. Knead dough. Listen. Make art. Nurture a seed. Observe nature. Play. Question the status quo. Read books. Say what you need to say. Tinker. Unfollow the crowd. Volunteer. Wander in the wild. Exerscape when necessary. Yodel just to see what it's like. And zigzag often. Those are such wonderful things that you can all do, along with all your other meditations. And like I said, I reposted this on my Facebook page in case you want a copy. I didn't come up with it, but it kind of made my heart sing a little bit, and you can do all those things. You can do one of those things. You can do one a day. If you think about it, those are 26 things. Start on the 1st or start today. And for the next 26 days, take one of those. Start with A, start with appreciating something and work your way down to zigzagging often. Little things to keep your mind going, to let you know that you're okay, that we're all okay. Some of us need a little bit more of this. Some of us need a little bit more of that. That's okay. We pay attention to our breathing. We pay attention to ourselves. Have your self-compassion pause, because it's about connecting with yourself. It's about connecting with others. It's not about being a diagnosis. It's not about this is what I am. This is who I am. It's just a little part of you. Just a little part of you. And I put these things out for you so that you can make it through the day, make it through the week. And like I said, sometimes just make it through the hour a little more mentally stronger. I use breathing exercises and I focus internally, and keep track of when you're feeling like you're starting to slide. If your doctor can't help, there are sites out there. There are people out there for you to talk to. There are volunteers that would love to hear what you have to say. And they're there to listen and to be with you and to be on your side. And I encourage you to get out there, to leave your home, to experience life. Some of us have to be more cautious due to COVID. Some of us have to be more cautious due to weather. Some of us have to be more cautious due to a lot of things. But if you can, get out there. Smell the flowers. In my case, we have flowers. In other cases, you may not have flowers, but you may find one. In a pile of snow, find one little flower that's got that will. You are that little flower. You are that little flower. So I want to thank you so much for listening today. It has been my pure pleasure to be even a small part of your journey. And I hope that it's been calming, a little bit soothing. Maybe you learned something. But mostly I hope that wherever you are, you're leaving a little closer to who you want to be. I'm Shirley, clinical hypnotherapist, activist, mental health first responder, advocate at, Springs In Hypnotherapy and Wellness. And I work together with my clients, maybe you. We work as a team to find the best way to get you where you want to be without any fear, without any worry. And I work online so I can be wherever you are and I can help you with whatever you need wherever you are. And I understand hypnotherapy isn't for everybody. So maybe we can work together. So once again, I'm Shirley, your wonderful Hypno Fairy Godmother, clinical hypnotherapist. And if you want to book an appointment, then you can find me anytime at whisperingzenhypnotherapy.com or anywhere where you may have found me on social media. It has been my sincere and real pleasure to help you today. Remember, we're going to take one more nice deep breath. Hold it. And exhale with a smile. Thanks for tuning in today. Remember to tell your friends about the show. I'm here every Monday at 3 o'clock Pacific. So let's grow this. Let's have some fun. And know that, when I tell you that I love you at the end of the show, I do mean it. Hope to see you next week because I will definitely be there. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.